Imagine two empires built on absolute control. One from the shadows of New York, where power was exercised without being seen. Another from the offices of Omaha, where every decision was published for the entire world. Carlo Gambino, the ghost who dominated organized crime for decades without a single official photograph. Warren Buffett, the oracle who turned transparency into his greatest asset. Both controlled empires valued in the billions. Both made decisions that defined generations. But their methods were radically opposed. Who dominated their empire better? The answer will reveal fundamental lessons about control, stability, and strategic decision-making. SEC Kind 2, Context and Origins. To understand how these empires were controlled with absolute mastery, it's necessary to return to the origins. Because control isn't improvised. It's built, refined, perfected over time. Carlo Gambino arrived in America in 1921. Just another Sicilian immigrant among millions, disembarking at the port of New York without money, without apparent connections, with nothing more than a mentality forged in the hills of Palermo. But Gambino brought something money couldn't buy, a deep understanding of how real power works. In Sicily, he had learned that true authority never makes noise. That authentic control is exercised from silence. That visibility is vulnerability. Over the next 3 decades, Gambino built his empire in the shadows. While other mobsters sought headlines and notoriety, he remained invisible. He worked on the docks, in the unions, in import operations. Every movement is calculated. Every alliance is strategic. Never the first to speak, always the last to decide. His philosophy was simple, but devastatingly effective. Observe, analyze, act only when the outcome was guaranteed. By 1957, Gambino had reached the pinnacle of the most powerful criminal structure in the United States. And he had done it without significant arrests, without photographs in newspapers, without public statements. He was the boss the FBI could barely prove existed. Warren Buffett was born in 1930 in Omaha, Nebraska. American middle class. Nothing extraordinary in appearance. But from childhood he showed a particular obsession, understanding how money multiplies. At 6 years old, he bought packs of Coca-Cola and resold them at a profit. At 11, he acquired his first stocks. At 13, he was filing tax returns. Buffett built his empire on a principle opposite to Gambino's: total transparency. While studying at Columbia under the tutelage of Benjamin Graham, he absorbed a fundamental lesson. The real value of a company can be calculated, measured, and predicted. There was no need for secrets or mysteries. Numbers never lie if you know how to read them correctly. In 1965, Buffett took control of Berkshire Hathaway, a declining textile company. It was his first major mistake, but also his most valuable lesson. Publicly admitting errors, learning from them, and converting them into strategic advantages. From that moment on, every investment decision would be documented, explained, justified in annual letters that anyone could read. Two radically different paths. Gambino built power by eliminating information. Buffett built power by sharing information. One operated under the principle that knowledge is power only if it remains hidden. The other under the principle that knowledge is power precisely when it's shared. But there were unexpected similarities. Both rejected immediate gratification. Both thought in decades, not quarters. Both built structures designed to survive without them. And both understood that true control doesn't come from dominating people, but from building systems that function independently of the leader's presence. The question then isn't who was more powerful. The question is, what type of control proves more effective when measured in decades, not years? Section 3. Opposing control philosophies. Control isn't an abstract concept. It's a methodology, a philosophy applied day after day until it becomes the backbone of an empire. And in this aspect, Gambino and Buffett represented two parallel universes that would never touch. Carlo Gambino operated under an unbreakable principle: real power doesn't need to be seen to be felt. For decades, while other mob bosses appeared on newspaper covers, gave interviews, flaunted their mansions, Gambino remained invisible. He lived in a modest house in Brooklyn. He drove discreet cars. He wore suits any office worker could use. His genius lay in understanding something many leaders ignore. Visibility attracts scrutiny, and scrutiny destroys empires. His organizational structure was decentralized in appearance, but absolutely controlled in essence. Each captain managed his territory with operational autonomy, but strategic decisions flowed from a single point: Gambino himself. He used compartmentalization as a weapon. No one knew the complete picture except him. Information was distributed in carefully measured fragments. A lieutenant knew enough to execute his function, but never enough to understand the complete system. Important decisions were made in a closed circle of absolute trust. There were no board meetings, no written reports, no traces. Everything operated through private conversations, verbal codes, tacit understandings. Loyalty was built on two pillars: respect earned through consistent results and clear consequences for betrayal. Gambino rarely needed to resort to violence because his reputation did the preventive work. Warren Buffett built his empire on the opposite principle. Trust is earned with radical transparency. Every year, Buffett publishes a letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders where he explains every important decision, every mistake made, every lesson learned. He doesn't hide failures. He documents them. He analyzes them. He converts them into public case studies. His organizational structure appears decentralized, and it effectively is. Berkshire Hathaway controls dozens of subsidiary companies, each operating with almost total autonomy. But this decentralization isn't chaotic. It's grounded in a rigorous selection system. Buffett only acquires companies with competent leaders who have demonstrated capacity to generate results without constant supervision. Once the company is acquired, Buffett practically doesn't intervene in daily operations. He trusts the numbers, not micromanagement. Decision-making at Berkshire follows an almost scientific methodology. Buffett analyzes financial statements, cash flow projections, sustainable competitive advantages. He doesn't invest in trends. He doesn't chase fads. He refused to invest in technology during the dot-com bubble of the late 90s because he didn't understand the business models. He lost short-term gains, but avoided catastrophic losses when the bubble burst in 2000. Where Gambino built loyalty through codes of honor and consequences, Buffett built loyalty through measurable results and rewards proportional to performance. Where Gambino centralized information, Buffett democratized it. Where Gambino operated in secret, Buffett operated under spotlights. But both shared something fundamental: strategic patience. Neither sought quick victories. Both were built for decades. Both understood that true control isn't dominating the present, but securing the future. Two opposing philosophies. Both extraordinarily effective. Both with profoundly different costs. Section 4. Stability strategies. An empire can be built quickly, but keeping it stable for decades requires something completely different: strategic vision, crisis anticipation, and capacity to sacrifice immediate gains for long-term survival. This is where both Gambino and Buffett demonstrated absolute mastery. Carlo Gambino inherited a violent world. The American mafia of the mid-20th century was a constant battlefield. Feuding families, betrayals, public executions that attracted devastating police attention. But Gambino understood something his predecessors ignored: violence is the resource of the weak, not the strong. True power resides in avoiding conflicts, not in winning them. His stability strategy was based on silent diplomacy. While other bosses declared territorial wars, Gambino negotiated privately. He established the Commission, a council of mafia families where disputes were resolved through discussion, not through blood. He acted as a neutral mediator, earning respect from all sides without becoming anyone's enemy. This position granted him influence without exposure. Gambino also made a strategic decision many considered a weakness. He rejected the drug business. In the 60s and 70s, narcotics trafficking generated massive fortunes. But Gambino saw beyond immediate profits. He understood that drugs attracted relentless federal attention. Those sentences were longer. That the business generated unstable addicts and unpredictable violence. He kept his organization focused on traditional operations: unions, gambling, loans, construction. Less profitable short-term, infinitely more sustainable long-term. He reinvested profits in legitimate businesses. restaurants, real estate, import companies. He created layers of legitimacy that protected the core of his operations. By the time federal agencies intensified investigations in the 70s, it was almost impossible to distinguish where his legal businesses ended and illegal ones began. Warren Buffett faced different but equally threatening crises. The financial market is an environment of constant volatility. Speculative bubbles, massive panics, unexpected collapses. During the financial crisis of 2008, when century-old institutions were crumbling in days, Berkshire Hathaway didn't just survive, it thrived. Buffett's stability strategy rested on unbreakable principles. First, maintain massive cash reserves. While other companies maximized debt to accelerate growth, Berkshire conserved billions in liquidity. This allowed him to act when others were paralyzed. In 2008, while banks collapsed, Buffett invested billions in Goldman Sachs and Bank of America, obtaining extraordinarily favorable terms. Second, invest only in understandable businesses with lasting competitive advantages. Buffett repeatedly rejected opportunities in emerging technology because he didn't understand the models. He missed the internet boom of the 90s, but he avoided catastrophic losses when the bubble burst in 2000. His discipline to reject what he didn't understand functioned as an immune system against bad decisions. Third, investment horizons measured in decades, not quarters. Buffett bought companies with the intention to keep them permanently. This mentality eliminated short-term performance pressure and allowed rational decisions during crises when others sold in panic. Both leaders sacrificed lucrative opportunities for systemic stability. Both built resilient structures designed to absorb shocks. Both understood that the true measure of control isn't how much is gained when everything goes well, but how much is preserved when everything collapses. Two different worlds. One identical lesson. Stability isn't an accident. It's a deliberate strategy. Section 5. The true character of a leader isn't revealed in times of prosperity. It's revealed when the empire is under existential threat, when every decision can mean survival or total collapse. Both Gambino and Buffett faced moments where one wrong choice would have destroyed everything built. In 1957, Carlo Gambino faced his defining moment. Albert Anastasia, one of the most violent and feared bosses of the American mafia, controlled one of New York's 5 families. Anastasia was unpredictable, brutal, and his leadership generated constant police attention that threatened the entire structure of organized crime. The situation was unsustainable, but no one dared to act. Gambino made a decision calculated with surgical precision. In October of that year, Anastasia was executed in a barber's chair at the Park Sheraton Hotel. Gambino didn't execute the act personally, nor did he leave traces connecting him directly. He orchestrated the movement from the shadows, first securing support from other families, guaranteeing that the power transition would be accepted, minimizing risk of retaliation. The result: Gambino assumed control of the Anastasia family without war, without chaos, without exposure. A masterful play of patience and perfect timing. Years later, when Robert Kennedy intensified federal persecution against organized crime, Gambino faced unprecedented pressure. Phone taps, constant surveillance, arrests of close associates. Other bosses reacted with paranoia, violence, and mistakes forced by desperation. Gambino did the opposite. He reduced visible operations, increased precautions, and waited. He didn't counterattack. He didn't make desperate moves. He simply became more invisible. He survived the Kennedy era without a single significant conviction. His most controversial but strategically brilliant decision was prohibiting his organization from becoming deeply involved in narcotics. In the 60s, when other families were generating massive fortunes with heroin, Gambino refused to participate aggressively. He understood that business would bring devastating federal sentences and destroy the structure carefully built over decades. He sacrificed immense profits for organizational survival. History proved him right. Families that embraced drug trafficking suffered massive dismantling in the 80s and 90s. Warren Buffett faced his definitive test in 2008. The global financial crisis was collapsing institutions that seemed invincible. Lehman Brothers, a company with 150 years of history, declared bankruptcy. AIG needed a government bailout. Panic dominated the markets. Investors were selling everything desperately. Buffett did exactly the opposite. In September 2008, he invested $5 billion in Goldman Sachs when no one else dared touch banking stocks. In April 2009, he invested another $3 billion in ExxonMobil. While the financial world collapsed, Buffett was buying. It wasn't a blind bet. It was cold analysis. These companies had solid fundamentals, real competitive advantages, and were being sold at absurd prices due to irrational panic. The pressure was immense. The media questioned his decisions. Analysts predicted catastrophic losses. Berkshire Hathaway lost market value temporarily. Buffett didn't change course. He maintained his investments. 3 years later, those positions generated massive profits. Goldman Sachs paid him extraordinary returns. The market recovered. Buffett emerged stronger than ever. His other crucial decision was publicly admitting the mistake of originally buying Berkshire Hathaway, a textile company with no future. Few leaders acknowledge mistakes of that magnitude. Buffett documented it in annual letters, converting it into a permanent lesson about the costs of emotional decisions. Two men, moments of extreme pressure, decisions that defined legacies. Both chose patience over panic, analysis over emotion, long-term over immediate gratification. Section 6. Liga IES and Miserable Results. In the end, empires are measured by concrete results, not by intentions, not by philosophies, but by tangible and lasting impact. When Carlo Gambino died in 1976 of natural causes in his own bed, surrounded by family, he left something extraordinary. An intact empire he had controlled for almost 2 decades without spending a single day in prison. Gambino's legacy defies all conventional logic. He operated at the highest level of American organized crime during the era of greatest federal persecution. Robert Kennedy had turned the destruction of the mafia into a personal crusade. The FBI had implemented unprecedented surveillance technology. Dozens of mob bosses were arrested, tried, and imprisoned. But Gambino remained untouchable. His criminal family survived decades after his death, becoming the most powerful and lasting mafia organization in the United States. The structure he built, based on compartmentalization, absolute discretion, and reinvestment in legitimate businesses, proved extraordinarily resilient. Even when less skilled successors took control, the system continued functioning. From a purely organizational perspective, completely ignoring ethical implications, Gambino built one of the most stable power structures of the 20th century. He avoided destructive internal wars that annihilated other families. He maintained subordinate loyalty through a combination of earned respect and clear consequences. He never allowed personal ego to put the entire organization at risk. But his legacy also reveals fundamental limitations. His empire was built on illegal activities that inevitably attracted constant persecution. No matter how skillful he was at evading personal capture, the complete structure operated under perpetual threat. Every member faced risk of arrest. Every operation required absolute secrecy. Every expansion brought new dangers. The model was sustainable, but never scalable or legitimately replicable. Warren Buffett built something completely different. When he began his career, $1,000 invested with him in 1965 would be worth more than $40 million today. Berkshire Hathaway went from being a bankrupt textile company to a conglomerate valued at over $700 billion. Buffett's impact transcends financial numbers. He completely transformed global investment philosophy. He demonstrated that radical transparency could coexist with extraordinary profitability. That publicly admitting mistakes strengthened trust instead of destroying it. That long-term investment based on solid fundamentals surpassed short-term speculation. He created an organizational culture where subsidiaries operated with almost total autonomy, but within a framework of clear values. Companies acquired by Berkshire rarely fired employees or changed management. Buffett bought well-managed businesses and simply let them continue being well-managed. This approach generated extraordinary loyalty and consistent results. His legacy also includes a massive educational component. Buffett's annual letters are studied in business schools globally. His investment principles are documented, analyzed, and applied by millions. He built an empire completely replicable by anyone with sufficient discipline to follow the principles. Both men built lasting empires through masterful control. But only one built a legacy that could be taught openly, replicated legally, and expanded indefinitely without constant existential threat. Gambino controlled his world perfectly within limitations he himself couldn't overcome. Buffett controlled his world and also redefined the rules of the game for future generations. Two legacies. Both are impressive. Only one truly sustainable. Section 7. Closing and final reflection. Two empires. Two opposing philosophies. One universal lesson. Carlo Gambino demonstrated that absolute control can be exercised from the shadows, that invisibility can be armor, that silence can be strategy. He built stability in a world of chaos through patience, discipline, and deep understanding of real power. Warren Buffett demonstrated that radical transparency can generate massive trust, that sharing knowledge multiplies influence, that well-read numbers reveal truths that no secret can hide. He built stability in volatile markets through cold analysis, rational decisions, and horizons of decades. Both rejected shortcuts. Both prioritized system survival over immediate gains. Both built structures designed to function without them. But only one built a replicable, teachable, scalable legacy without legal or ethical limits. The final lesson isn't that one method is superior to the other in terms of pure effectiveness. Both worked extraordinarily well within their contexts. The lesson is that true control doesn't reside in dominating the present, but in ensuring the system survives the leader. And that transparency, legality, and ethics aren't obstacles to strategic success. They're long-term impact multipliers. In business, as in life, the path chosen defines not only results, but also the type of legacy that remains when everything else disappears. If this video was useful to you, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. There are more comparisons like this on the way. What other strategic confrontations would you like to explore? Leave it in the comments. See you in the next analysis.